Shalom, it is the 39th day of the war. It is November 14th. It is 5:30 p.m. here in Israel, about 10:30 a.m. on the Eastern Coast. And let's jump into it. First of all, good news, really good news today. And that is, first of all, the DC rally. So all of those that are watching this on the Eastern Coast and on your way to the rally or watching this during the rally, after the rally, wherever you might be, thank you so very much for going. All of us here in Israel means the most to us, and we're really appreciative. It'll be great for Israelis to see just how much America cares, and we are tremendously grateful. Thank you so very much. Huge victories last night in Gaza. Israel is demolishing Hamas at a much quicker rate. Nobody imagined it would go this fast. There were two places where Israel, two last stands of Hamas that Israel took out. One was the Al-Shati camp, and one was the Sheikh Radwan camp. Both of these camps completely demolished by Israel last night. The only people left in these camps were Hamas fighters. They are dead. The tunnels are destroyed, and I have fascinating news about the tunnels, how they're doing it. This is a really great news. The tunnels that they found were so big, they had elevators that took it down, and so wide that full trucks used to drive through these tunnels. They don't anymore, and that is great news. Now, how's Israel destroying these tunnels? In the beginning of the war, Israel would draw out Hamas fighters. So as they would start shooting, and then they would see where Hamas fighters would come out and exit out of the tunnels. And this was a great strategy. They'd wait, they'd see them come out, and see them go back in. They'd call in a plane or a drone for an airstrike. They would drop the bomb straight down into the tunnel, blow up the tunnel, and then the tunnel would blow up. And then we saw in the refugee camp that there was so much destruction because when the tunnel blew up, the street above the tunnel collapsed. The buildings collapsed inside, causing mass destruction. Well, Israel had a secret weapon for the tunnels that they started to employ inside of Gaza, and it is called, I kid you not, a SpongeBob. Okay, now what is it? It's a great name. The SpongeBob. What it does is it is a non-explosive bomb, and it drops into the tunnel. Two liquid chemicals combine, and it starts to expand at a great rate, and it turns into almost like a sponge-like substance and fills up the entire tunnel, making the entire tunnel unusable. It spreads through it like crazy. So last night, Israel started using this. I mean, they might have started using it before. Last night was the first time that we, the public, were informed that they had been using this SpongeBob and took out the entire tunnel. So great news on that front. Israel also is hit Hezbollah harder than it imagined that Israel would, killing soldiers, taking out weapons up in north, and this is in the north now, and really an incredibly successful day. Israel is advancing both in the north and against Gaza at quicker rates than even Israel imagined, showing once again the strategy of patience. Taking things at the right time will end up with quicker results in the long run. Israel's running this war perfectly. Bad news, unfortunately. Noah Marciano, Hashem Yimach Dama, was announced. Hamas is, again, we warned at the beginning of the war. The government warned us, the army warned us, and it's important for us to be prepared for this, that Hamas would use various psychological tools to try to demoralize the Israeli people. Last night, these savages released a video of a soldier that was taken hostage, Noah Marciano, showed her alive, and then quickly the video switched to showing her dead, claiming that she was struck and killed in an Israeli airstrike. Although the pictures seem to point to the fact that she suffered head trauma, that is consistent with being beaten to death. And we wish the very best to her family and condolences. And that is an unbelievable shame. Another death that was announced yesterday was Vivian Silver. Vivian Silver is famous here in Israel because she's a peace activist. She's Canadian. She lived in Kibbutz Be'eri and was an activist for the people of Gaza. She worked very, very hard on ensuring a better life for the people of Gaza, tried bringing peace between Israelis and the people of Gaza. And ironically, in the worst sense of irony, she was killed on October 7th. They only identified her body yesterday, but she was killed on October 7th in a brutal way by members of Hamas and or other Palestinian terrorists. We don't know who exactly killed her, but it's a shame. It's a shame that somebody dedicated her life to peace with the people would be killed by those very people. And it's probably a lesson for all of us to take. But in the mean, before we take that lesson, we need to mourn her and mourn her loss and wish condolences to her family and to her friends and to her community. Israel didn't announce the name yesterday, but and has no inside information that this actually happened. But just based on simple math, one of the hostages was taken in her 9th month of pregnancy, and being how many days has passed since she was taken, hopefully she's alive and healthy, and if so, she gave birth to a baby in while being a hostage, which would mean that the numbers of hostages now increased by one newborn baby. It's amazing that Hamas will not release that baby and her mother. Going on to analysis. So the rumors have been getting stronger and stronger that Israel is closer to a deal for release of the hostages. What that would look like, what Israel would be willing to give up, we don't know. We don't know what the government is thinking. We don't know how the negotiations are going. These are incredibly secret. Anything that is released could harm negotiations, so we're not going to hear anything. But if you're asking me my opinion, I would imagine that a deal would look like hostages being freed for certain non-threatening members of the Palestinian Hamas community that are held in Israeli jails now. That could be minors, that could be women, whatever it is. I would imagine it would be something like that. Hamas is not going to just simply give up these hostages, and Israel is not going to pay too heavy of a price for them. So we'll have to see how this comes out, but it seems to be that if a deal is going to be made, it's getting closer and closer. An issue of some controversy here in Israel that's important for everybody to know about. There are soldiers in the Israeli army that were killed during the Simchas Torah massacre, and these soldiers are not halakhically Jewish. According to Orthodox Jewish view of conversion and of who is counted as a Jew and who is not, and this is the policy of the state of Israel, follows Orthodox tradition, follows the tradition that Jews have had since Har Sinai, until people have recently changed this tradition, but the state of Israel goes by this tradition, which is what created this controversy, which is that Jews that were not converted through a halachic conversion, or who never wanted to convert, and just were never considered Jewish because either they never converted or their mother wasn't Jewish, or their mother's mother wasn't Jewish, going all the way back. So they have not been buried with Jews in a cemetery. They've been buried on the other side of a fence within the cemetery grounds. This has obviously caused a lot of consternation and was the source of great angst yesterday in Knesset committee meetings, where voices were raised of how we could separate two people killed because they were part of Israel in burial when they were killed as one. And that's something that Israel is going to have to work out. When it comes to soldiers, when it comes to actual soldiers as opposed to civilian victims, soldiers are all buried in military cemeteries, Israeli military cemeteries, irrespective of their faith. Okay, the hostage, a lot of the families have started a demonstration. The families of hostages have started a demonstration. It's important to note that families are going to be protesting heavily until their family members are freed. That's always been the history of Israel, that family members of hostages or family members of people whose bodies are being held hostage protest against the government to ensure that the government pays attention to them. And that's sort of, unfortunately, the way it works in Israel, that unless these families are going to protest, no one's going to pay attention to them. At the same time, Israel has to decide how much to pay attention to the family members and how much to pay attention to the national security of Israel. Okay, another point of contention that's starting to become a large point of contention between Israel and the United States and the international community. Is the international community has essentially decided that at the end of this war, the Palestinian Authority should retake control over Gaza. The Israeli government is not in favor of this. They do not like this idea at all, for the very simple reason that the Palestinian Authority is an inept organization that sponsors terrorism. So that's not that much better than Hamas ruling Gaza. And if Israel wants there to be a fundamental change in how Gaza is ruled, putting the Palestinian Authority in charge is not a solution. That's obviously annoying the international community that sees this as a very easy solution to the problem. Just put the Palestinian Authority in charge. Israel always has to think past the next day and sees a week ahead and realizes that a week after or a year after Palestinian Authority is put in charge, they're going to lose control, or their rule, because they sponsor terror and do other things, their rule is not going to mean that much. Okay, let's get to questions here. The first question is, how come Egypt isn't letting all the Palestinian Americans leave Gaza right away? Who's in charge of that process? So I think the Palestinian Americans have been let go. I haven't heard that there are any more Palestinian Americans still stuck in Gaza. It wasn't Egypt that was holding them back. It was Hamas that wouldn't let them go. Hamas was negotiating for things. What did Hamas negotiate for? To allow the foreign nationals to leave. They negotiated for innocent Palestinians who were injured and needed medical attention that they couldn't get in Gaza to be released. America and Egypt and Qatar worked out this deal with Hamas, and then part of the conditions of that deal was that Hamas only allow innocent Palestinian civilians to be released. It turned out that a third of the people that Hamas wanted to release were actually Hamas fighters who were injured in fighting Israel, and they broke the deal. But the Americans were let out and foreign nationals were let out. Just Hamas members were not allowed out. Okay. What are the key strategies Israel is using in the current conflict? How does Israel view the role of organizations like UNRWA and the Palestinian refugee issue? So, as we mentioned yesterday a lot, UNRWA is a non-helpful section of the United Nations that prolongs the conflict, and in order to vilify Israel, it elongates the refugee crisis. To hear more about this, you can watch yesterday's video. And what Israel is currently doing, its current strategy, is to ignore organizations like that and use the military to solve a lot of Israel's problems. It does not view UNRWA or any other of these so-called aid organizations or NGOs, which have traditionally been sponsor of Hamas and helped Hamas and worked alongside with Hamas, as allies in making Gaza terrorism free. How will Israel go about destroying the tunnels that are under hospitals and under the schools? So Israel it's almost like it's not our Israel, the Israel that we're used to. It's amazing to watch. What Israel's doing is being patient, slow. It's meticulously recording what it finds before it destroys it. So the Hamas headquarters and the Hamas tunnels leading up to the hospital, Israel sent their spokesperson, who usually sits in Tel Aviv and is outside of the military zone, sent the spokesperson inside the hospital, inside the tunnels, to record video of seeing how weapons are stored in the hospital, then coming out, and then Israel will come in and destroy it. It's an incredible strategy. Israel is usually just brute force that destroys everything. Instead, they're recording, they're showing the international community, and the international community is slowly starting to understand, because of the video evidence that Israel's presenting, that this isn't something where you could just say, well, Israel's attacking a hospital. You're not finding international condemnation. As much as the Palestinians try to make this about, oh, Israel's attacking a hospital, it's becoming very clear to the international community that Hamas is using these hospitals in a cynical fashion as protection for themselves, putting human shields like sick babies in front of them. Now, this doesn't surprise any of us that have dealt with Palestinian terrorists before, because we know that this is what they do. Okay, how many Hamas leaders are left? We don't know how many Hamas leaders there are. At least we don't. The public doesn't know, but there are a lot less left than there were yesterday. Why do you think the war is going well? Because Israel's distorting evil, even though Israeli soldiers are getting killed. I think the war is going well because even though Israeli soldiers are being killed, the war is going well because Hamas members are dying at much higher rates than Israeli soldiers. So yes, every Israeli soldier is a loss, and every single one matters. But the Israeli soldiers that are being killed at a much lower rate than we expected, and Hamas members are dying, being killed at a much higher rate than are being expected. So no one expected this war to be where no Israeli soldiers would die. Israeli soldiers are well aware that as they enter Gaza, they're entering a zone that they might be killed in. That is something that they recognize, and they know the risks, and they know that war comes at risks, and Israel knows that war comes at risk. But there is a much greater risk of allowing the enemy to live. That is the cold reality of war, is that both sides will suffer losses. We are doing our very best and succeeding at ensuring that their side, this terrorism side, experiences many more losses than our side, and it's working. How should Israel deal with the civilians in the hospital that they surrounded? Israel has offered to release to escort the patients out, that they will be responsible for the patient's security. Hamas is not allowing that to happen. Under international law, this is straight international law, Israel has to allow the patients to leave, and after that, Israel is allowed to attack the hospital. As horrible as that is not Israel's choice. That's the choice that Israel is being forced into. But international law is clear. If the enemy is using a hospital, Israel has every right to use that hospital, to attack that hospital after giving clear warning and a way of the enemy to take out its innocence. The enemy is not doing that. Ari, Prime Minister Netanyahu's future. Why should Bibi resign for something Iran did? Well, so if Bibi leaves, who becomes Prime Minister? Yair Lapid? Come on now. For America, it looks like, so far at least, that Bibi is doing an excellent job politically, diplomatically, militarily, in prosecuting the Gaza war. The argument that Bibi should resign is the argument that this happened due to an intelligence failure that is largely his responsibility. The buck stops with him. I wrote yesterday about 3 other world leaders who were 3 other world leaders who also had surprise attacks. FDR with Pearl Harbor, Golda Meir with the Yom Kippur War, and George W. Bush with 9/11. Not only did they not resign immediately, but all 3 of them were reelected by their constituencies, by America, Israel, and America, in all 3 cases after their intelligence failures. So there is precedent for him to stay on, and only time will tell. Why hasn't Israel utilized its accomplishments in Syria to neutralize the systems in Gaza that Hamas employs? 2 totally different systems. Hamas does not have the sophistication that Hezbollah has. So, but when they do, when you can use the same systems, they do. But Hezbollah is much more sophisticated, much more powerful than Hamas is. So that's why. Okay, what caused Rashed to think of herself as a refugee? Is she just saying so to get people's votes and support, or is she saying it for the benefits that the refugees get from Israel? Okay, refugees do not get anything from Israel. Palestinian refugees get nothing from Israel. Rashed Tlaib and all other Palestinians view themselves as refugees because, in their opinion, they were forced out of Palestine in 1948 for the creation of Israel, and others were forced out in 1967 after the 6-Day War. It's absurd. Number one, most were not forced out, most left on their own volition. But even so, most of them are descendants of refugees, not refugees themselves. But they like to take on the moniker of refugee because that vilifies Israel. Israel's the one that's keeping us out of our land. In fact, they left on their own. I have almost no doubt that if you look at the history of Rashed Tlaib's ancestors, whether it be her grandmother, her great-grandparents, you will find that they were not forced out by Israel. Okay, why is Hamas trying so hard to stop the hospital from getting the fuel? Why do they care about Israel as helping innocent people, and why are they so involved with making sure that the hospital doesn't get fuel? Okay, this is a larger question, Tyra, and I'm gonna address it with a larger picture. Hamas needs a ceasefire. Hamas is getting walloped by Israel. They are being destroyed by Israel. They need a ceasefire. In order to get the ceasefire, they're going to need international pressure to bear down on Israel, especially the United States. The only way to get the international community to bear down on Israel and to ensure that Israel must accept the ceasefire is by vilifying Israel, making Israel look horrible. And the way to do that is by making it look like Israel's bombing innocent civilians in hospitals. If Hamas would allow innocent civilians to leave, the next thing that would happen is Israel would bomb and demolish the hospital, because sitting under the hospital are the Hamas headquarters. That would be the easiest thing, and Israel would do it in a second, because there would be nobody dying. So Hamas must keep the civilians in there, putting Israel in a catch-22. It can either leave the civilians where they are inside the hospital, in which case then Hamas lives to fight another day, or it can destroy the hospital, killing the civilians in the hospital, and then Hamas gets to vilify Israel, make Israel look horrible in the world's eyes. Look, they just attacked the hospital. They killed innocent victims, which again, according to international law, they'd be allowed to. But then the international community would force Israel into a ceasefire. So that's the catch-22 that they're in. Okay. How can Israel's security improve to prevent something like this from ever happening again? So security experts are obviously going to be looking at this. One way is ensuring that no matter what occurs, right? Hamas used mass distraction. They distracted Israel for the year before with larger attacks coming from Judea and Samaria from the West Bank. They distracted Israel by saying that by allowing other terrorist groups in Gaza, to attack, and then saying that Hamas is not going to attack. They don't see any purpose of attacking anytime soon, lulling Israel into thinking that Hamas wasn't going to attack, and in fact, then they did. Israel can't be surprised again. Israel's got to set up making sure that, and I think that they have to make sure that nobody from Gaza is allowed to enter into Israel ever again. That's what I think. Mine the wall, set up perimeters. If you cross this line, a sniper will shoot you, so that people understand, and then don't allow anybody to cross that line and get anywhere near the wall. That's what I would think. Is school still continuing for both Israel and Palestine? I'm not. Well, in Gaza, there's definitely no school. There's for sure no school. Here in the West, in Judea and Samaria, the West Bank, Israel has normal school, and I'm pretty sure the Palestinians have normal school as well. I wouldn't understand why they wouldn't. What could Israel look like after wartime? I'm not sure what that means. After war, Israel's going to go back to normal life. We're about 60% normal right now. We need our reservists back, and then we have to figure out what to do about cheap labor. Cheap labor used to be Palestinians. Now I think we're going to have to bring them from somewhere else. I really hope we do. I hope we never let any Palestinian if somebody identifies as a Palestinian, they're Israeli citizen, we call them Israeli. Doesn't make a difference. They're Arab, they're Muslim, they're Jewish. I don't care what you are. You have Israeli citizenship. You have every right that I have. But I'm hoping that anybody that's a Palestinian that doesn't take Israeli citizenship, even, and I know this is going to sound controversial, even those that live in Jerusalem, if they don't want Israeli citizenship, then they don't get to come into Israel. Ship them out. And that's my opinion. You want to be in Israel, take on Israeli citizenship. You don't want Israeli citizenship, you don't want to be a part of this country, get them out. Simple choice. Get rid of the problem. Don't allow anybody back in. Okay. That needs a little more time to be worked out exactly how the details will work. I'm not a guy working on the program. No one's turning to me except for the people writing YouTube questions, but nobody's turning to me for solutions. So obviously that has to be worked out a lot more. But that's what I would, as an Israeli who wants to be secure and doesn't want to have to look over his shoulder all the time, that's what I would like. Okay, what if Hamas is Hamas using the hostages against Israel? For example, if Israel keeps taking out Hamas terrorists, will they hurt the hostages? Will Israel pause for the safety of the hostages? I don't know what Israel is going to do. Hamas will definitely use the hostages against Israel. They will shoot them on live TV. They will use psychological warfare against Israel with each and every. They know that each and every one of these hostages is valuable to us. If this was Israel holding, Palestinians hostage, and Israel said, listen, Hamas, you've got about 24 hours to release our hostages, or we're going to start shooting your hostages, they could care less. They would love that. They don't care about their own hostages at all. What role does the return of hostages play in shaping the priorities and decisions of Israel during the conflict? Okay, that's what we've been discussing this entire video. Could it be possible that if other countries surrounding Israel help Hamas, could Israel wage war on them as well? Such as Egypt possibly helping Hamas supply with tunnels. No, other countries are not going to help against the war, because then they know that opens them up for attack themselves. How is UNRWA helping with the fuel crisis in Gaza? UNRWA is not helping the fuel crisis at all. In fact, UNRWA's own last storages of fuel were stolen by Hamas, so they're not going to help at all. Okay, what role does Gaza ground invasion would change if Hezbollah gets involved? I'm not sure it would. I think it would keep going. Could Israel benefit from Hamas blocking fuel delivery to the hospitals? No, Israel does not benefit from fuel being blocked to the hospitals at all. Okay, that's the end of our video today. Please leave any questions you have after. Let's hope that there's peace. Let's hope that there is safety, security. Our soldiers get home safely. Our hostages get home safely. And we have a tremendous victory in this war. So.